Welcome back. We are back to the daily puzzle solving series here on chess.com. It is another 2000 plus rated puzzle that we're taking a look at, and we're going to try to learn a lot from solving this puzzle live together. Feel free to pause the video if you want to assess the overall board position first. That's what we're going to do before we jump into coming up with some candidate moves and actually calculating the variations. So first thing to notice is that our opponent has two rooks and we only have one. And in exchange for one of the rooks, we have a knight. So we're down an exchange in material. And both sides have a bishop. And we have 5 pawns, and he also has 5 pawns. But his pawn structure is a little bit more scattered than ours. In exchange for the deficit in material, we have a slightly stronger attack on the opponent's king. I would say our opponent's king is maybe 2 out of 10 less safe than ours. So I would give him a 4 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10. I would give our king a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 in safety. So we should look for ways to amplify that attack and use it to maybe gain a material advantage over our opponent. Another thing to notice is that this bishop here is very blocked off by our own pawn chain. It's currently running into this d5 pawn right here. And our opponent's bishop is also blocked off by most of the action with this f5 pawn. It's also not able to reach these squares due to the effect of our pawns on those squares. Whoops, let me draw that diagonal arrow. Okay. So effectively, we're both playing a bishop down unless some sort of a breaking move like d4 can suddenly get the bishop into play with a tempo. So we'll keep that in mind as we look further into this position. Another thing to notice is that our knight on h4 is currently under attack by the enemy pawn. And our rook is having this x-ray effect on the enemy rook, and his rook is also attacking our rook through that pawn. His queen is defending this rook currently on g1, so it's not really a pin on the pawn. And our king is also defending our rook, so we're not pinned either. Our queen is attacking this g3 pawn. It's defended twice by his rooks. That seems like a major focal point of the position is the fate of this pawn and what's going to happen to it. And we also have the potential of playing knight to f3 with a check on the king on e1 as well as the rook on g1, but it's currently, that square is guarded by the queen on f3. And as we lead into that and start taking a look at the candidate moves, we do notice that the move d4, which gains a tempo on the enemy queen, also uncovers another effector of this square, another contender, if you will, which would allow us to get the move knight f3 check in. And it also attacks the rook on d2, so it's a triple fork. So that looks quite promising. And if we were to just actually calculate that, so we would go d4, and let's say he plays rook takes d4. You could also play queen takes d4, but that's not recommended because if queen takes d4, then knight to f3 is now a fork of the queen. It's a quadruple fork, and we would be winning huge material. So he can't take with the queen. So let's say he takes with the rook. Then we jump in with knight f3 check. He's got to move his king. He can't take with the queen because of our bishop. And let's say he goes king to f2, for example. Here, we might even be able to play queen to h2 check. Let's just check that. We have our bishop affecting all the way to g2, so he can't block with the rook. And once he moves his king out of the way, let's say to f1, we can take on g1, and then he takes back with his queen. We could take back with the knight. He takes back with the king. We also get this pawn on g3 with a check. So that looks pretty good for us. We would be winning our pawn back. The only thing is after that sequence, the material would be even because we have a rook and a bishop both. So it's not clear if we're actually up a sufficient amount to claim that we're winning in that position. But we do have this passed f pawn as well, so that is a slight advantage to us. Um, let's look at this a little bit deeper and see if there's anything else that he can do. He can't go to f1 because our queen is currently affecting that square. And if he were to move to, let's say, further away from the action, let's say to e2, knight takes here would be with a check, but we can also go queen h2 check once again. And now if he were to move his king further, like to d1, we can just take the rook for free on g1 because both our queen and our knight are attacking it. So he's got to keep his king like close to the rook by moving to f1 if we were to give a check, so that he can defend the rook twice. Is there anything that we can do to win a rook straight up instead of just winning an exchange back? So d4 check, rook takes, or even pawn takes is also a possibility. Let's say he goes king f2. So after queen h2 check, if he goes king f1, let's say he doesn't take here with the rook. Let's say he takes with a pawn. In this case, we can actually take here with the queen or even the knight, and we would be winning this rook for nothing. So it seems like rook takes is almost forced. So knight f3 check, king f2. Can we just take the rook here? Looks like he can just take back with his queen and be totally okay after that. Queen is still guarding the rook on g1. So looks like rook takes is the better option for him. There goes my cat again, guys. Sorry about that. It doesn't look like we can win this rook, at least in that variation, other than for the exchange of a knight. So with all those things considered, let's take a look at the board position again and see if there's any other candidate moves. So rook takes g3. He takes back with the rook, let's say, and then queen h1 check. He just can come back and block it with the rook. There's no knight g2 check because both of these rooks are contending that square. Knight f3 check first and then queen takes doesn't work because after d4 you can just take our bishop. And rook to no other square looks like it really makes a lot of sense. I mean, maybe we can put a rook to here and then try to pin his queen, but he can just take the knight, and now he's got a pin of our rook to our king, and he's going to trade off a lot of material, and also he will have won the knight in that case. So we certainly can't do that. So let's go ahead and commit to d4 as a first move. I know that we haven't fully calculated this through yet and figured out how exactly we're going to win back an entire rook, but I think we can confidently make this as a first move and kind of see what he does from there. Okay, so that is correct, and he does take with the rook. And also, I think we're pretty confident with knight f3 check as a second move because that was the whole point of this pawn sacrifice, was to get that move in. There's also knight g2 check now that he's moved his rook out of the way. So that is another possibility. Knight g2 check, he would take back with the rook, and then we can take with the bishop or the queen. So there's a legit contender here between knight f3 check and knight g2 check. Knight f3 check. Let's say he goes to king to d1. Is there any way to win either of the rooks? I don't see it. On the other hand, if knight g2 check, he can take with the rook, as we mentioned, and then we could take here with the queen, and we would keep a little bit more material on the board, so we would still have the attack in addition to being up the material, and then we also have this very active bishop here that's doing a lot better than his bishop. He does have a check here on. He's just really hungry. I'm gonna get him some food after this. He already had dinner, but he likes to have a snack at around 10 p.m. at night, and it's getting close to that time. He's a very talkative guy, as you can tell. So rook d8 check is an option for him, and he can maybe get his pieces in. So I'm just trying to evaluate whether or not we will have enough of an advantage after either of these two moves to just win the rooks for the knight. I don't see any other move that would come into play. The bishop is not really the bishop can't really threaten anything because all these pieces are on dark squares, including his king. Rook takes g3 still doesn't make any sense, and we have to kind of do something quickly in order to take advantage of the fact that his king is able to be checked and the vulnerability of his pieces. The good thing about knight f3 check is that he can't immediately sacrifice for it. He can't take with the queen, whereas here he can take with the rook. Is there another move altogether that we could consider? He's still threatening to just take this knight here, so I think whatever we do, it has to be a check. Perhaps knight here, king here, and then... Oh, no, I'm sorry. You can't go king there. I was thinking about rook takes and then maybe a queen h1 check here with the queen. And something could happen where he could lose his bishop on b1, potentially. But if we gave that check, he could just come back with his rook. So I don't think he's really afraid of that. Knight here, rook takes, queen takes. And then are we threatening queen h1 check, perhaps? He could just go king f1. We go queen h1 check, blocks with the queen. And then we can give a check here with the bishop. And then he can go king f2. I don't see a way to continue that variation. Yeah, this is a tough fork in the road here, it looks like. I don't see any other possibilities other than one of these two knight checks. I just don't currently see the difference between the two moves. I mean, something weird can always happen. Knight f3 check. Just examining this once again. I think king d1 here is the safest move. Knight takes, queen takes, and then rook takes here, with the idea that we have a pretty strong attack as well. And then let's say he gives a check on d8. We go king h7, and then he comes back and gives a check on d7. Now he's forking our king and the bishop. And then we can just go king h6 in that case. We still have the attack on his queen, so we're not super scared of him taking the bishop immediately. And then if he goes, let's say, queen to b6, trying to conjure up like a counterattack with a fork here, we can go queen h1 check. And then king here, we could go rook to g2 check, king to e3 maybe, and then queen here, king here, rook here, check, king here. That king chase looks pretty promising for us. It seems like we're kind of inevitably gonna find some sort of breakthrough. And I think maybe we could have even won his queen at some point with a check skewer this way. If you were to go to b6. So that, I mean, that's a possibility. So we have that line, but is it too remote? Is the question. Knight f3 check, king here. Queen, knight takes, queen takes, rook takes. This is the line that we were considering. You know, with ideas of potentially skewering the back rank too. Well, we're coming up almost on 16 minutes now. I think we gotta make a move here. So let's go with knight f3 check. So it looks a little bit stronger to me. It's forking one additional piece, and he ends up taking with the queen. I suspected that he was going to do that, and we just take the queen. Oh, and the puzzle is not over, shockingly. Okay, so here, our queen looks like it's trapped, but we can always just take and then use this pin. Takes, he moves his king to there, and then we can take this bishop. Okay, that was the end of that puzzle. Crazy puzzle. Let's take a look at what would have happened if he didn't go to take on f3 with his queen. Okay, so here I was thinking he could just go king d1, right? And then, yeah, knight takes g1, queen takes g1. And here, the best move, rook takes g3. So that was what I had evaluated as well, that this would be enough to have like a very crushing attack. And then I looked at rook d8 check, king h7, rook d7 check, king h6, and then queen to b6. And in this case, yeah, the king chase is just too much for him. Stockfish gives queen f1 check here as the first move, and then king d2, rook g2 check, and let's say queen e3, and then queen f2 is going to be mate with the pawns on f5 and c4 supporting that. Okay, so that was the difference. It's getting that move in. And let's say that we had gone to g2 instead. Rook takes, queen takes, rook d8, king h7, rook h8 check, king takes, queen h6 check, king g8, queen takes e6 check, king f8, queen f6 check, rook f7. And it looks like he just gets a perpetual check here with the queen. Is there any way we can kind of like slip out of it here? And then he's got to go queen g6 check, king d8, queen b6 check, king c8. And then, oh, he's got this bishop check coming in here too. So it looks like he just gets us with a perpetual check, despite the fact that we're up a full rook in this variation after sacrificing on h8 with a crazy tactic. But Stockfish says even just queen f4 here is enough to make a draw or have at least like a very even position. So without the rook coming in on g3 with the tempo, we don't have enough to claim a winning position. So very interesting puzzle. My longest video to date, but I hope you guys have enjoyed. And I will see you guys tomorrow. And don't forget to check out my mailing list. Send me an email to sign up, and I'll send you updates about my book. It's currently in progress, but if somebody requests it, I will finish it up and shoot it over to you by the end of winter break. So the end of January. And it's going to contain a lot of very helpful tips and tricks for beginners to get onboarded onto chess. If you enjoy these videos and want to try to understand them better, I explain the vocabulary and some of the underlying theory behind solving chess tactics and how to play the game. And I'm also available for chess lessons. If you want to get in touch and hear about my rates, go ahead and send me an email as well. But other than that, I'll see you guys tomorrow with another Chess Live puzzle.